Um, clearly Trump and his team didn't learn anything from their first misadventure on June 24th, 25th, when they obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. Iran, looking back on it, had basically pushed or resisted the offers of assistance that were being um, suggested by Russia and by China. And, I think actually if Iran had been a bit more aggressive in accepting that kind of assistance, the war between June 13th and June 25th wouldn't have happened, that 12-day war, as it's called. Now, the good news is Iran woke up out of its slumber and has been in close contact with both Russian military officials, Russian energy officials, as well as with the Chinese. Nonetheless, both the United States and Israel seem intent that they're going to try it again. I've got mixed views. There's the part of me inside that says, okay, yeah, I hope it happens, not because I want to see death and destruction, but the odds are that if it does happen, this will destroy Israel. And frankly, Israel as a state, it needs to cease to exist because of its murderous conduct. It's like a cancer in the Middle East, in my view. But the politically correct part of me says, no, listen, I hope it doesn't happen, and I hope they don't go this route. I think Iran is very well prepared this time for that possibility. And, I noticed that Pezeshkian, when he was in New York City recently for the United Nations General Assembly, met with a group. Judge Napolitano was there, Jeffrey Sachs was there, Max Blumenthal was there. And he basically conceded, he anticipates that he may be killed, but that Iran has prepared contingencies to deal with the situation. So, yeah, we're in a room with gasoline and kerosene and a lot of flammable liquids, and we're smoking a cigarette. It's not a good situation.
No. But I do sympathize with what you said about, I guess, the accelerationist approach to this. As outside observers, if there's one thing that can be appreciated from something as horrific as this, it would be, the destruction of Israel. But one thing that I think stuck out to a lot of people in the first battle is the fact that Iran really, seemingly, their air defenses didn't put up any sort of legitimate fight. Maybe towards the end, they kind of coordinated them a little bit better. This was one of the big things that Russia had been talking about for some time, was to integrate it with Iran's air defenses with the whole Russian system. Can an issue like that be fixed in such a short period of time?
Yeah, I think so. I'll note as sort of a parenthetical comment. The Chinese were really, or I guess the Indians were really impressed with the S-400. How well it worked when they went to had that exchange with Pakistan. It appears that, and during the 12-day war, the only S-400 in country in Iran was at a reactor in the south where Russia was actually working. And the Russians, I understand, told the United States and Israel, don't even think about attacking us. But and steered clear. Both Russia, both the United States and Israel steered clear of that. But it appears now that Iran has been willing to. They're either taking in the Russian system or the Chinese system. It'd be foolish of them, I think, to try to take two and try to integrate two. They need to take one and integrate that in a comprehensive way. But Clearly, Iran has been in a different mindset. Uh, it was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the chief of staff of the Iranian Defense Forces was in Moscow, and meeting with a variety of people. So that they've elevated their contacts. So and Russia has the capability to put personnel into Iran, to help them to get it up to speed, if nothing else, to operate it in the initial stages. So that's why I think Iran is in a much better position to withstand an attack. It's not going to be this surprise attack like that took place. And it's worth noting that what happened on June 13th, where the Israelis fully anticipated they'd decapitate the Iranian leadership and therefore cause complete chaos in the government. Within 12 hours, they were up and running and launching retaliatory strikes into Israel. So it just shows the West does not understand Iran.
Yes. As for the relations with Russia, I don't know if this is true, but I saw a post today, and it could be true. Putin and Netanyahu had that phone call a few days ago. And apparently there was some discussion about these Russian military cargo aircraft heading into Iran. Also, a few days prior to that, Ukraine was out boasting about how they had new Israeli-delivered defense systems, I think, at their disposal. And supposedly on this call, Netanyahu suggested that those sorts of deliveries to Ukraine might increase if Russian military cargo jets continue landing in Iran. That seems a bit of a flagrant conversation. I don't know if that's really how it went down, but there clearly is this diverging of powers between Russia and Israel, and they're really seemingly breaking off right now. What do you think? That's an accurate assessment? Is this what we're witnessing?
I don't know why President Putin has exercised so much patience towards Israel. While it's, I understand that, roughly 2 million Russian citizens are also citizens of Israel. Now, but these so-called former citizens of Russia, they don't harbor warm feelings towards the motherland because they left. It's the typical Zionist mentality that they view Russia as evil. So they're not going to go out of their way to be kind. I think Russia could do a lot more to rein in Israel. Working with China and India, embargo them, shut them down, no more trade. But if Netanyahu is stupid enough to make that kind of veiled threat to Putin, the one thing I've observed of the man over the last 26 years is that's not the way to get him on your Christmas card list. He takes those things very seriously. So I guess I question whether that kind of exchange actually took place, because if anything, I would expect President Putin to say, okay, fine, send them. We're going to destroy them. And once we get those destroyed, then we'll deal with you.
Well, they did send, I saw right before we went live, another military cargo plane landed in Iran. So that happened after the phone call. It is a fact that Israel sent some sort of military hardware to Ukraine, but very interesting to say the least. As for the ceasefire deal with Hamas, the United States, Israel, do you have any updates on that? I think it's just kind of fantastic that you have Israel, who's now being forced to negotiate by proxy, at least,
right,
with the same people that they said they were going to crush and kill for years, that they attempted to crush and kill a few weeks ago in Qatar, and now they're being forced to negotiate with them once again.
Yeah. So for starters, I don't, and this is not a criticism at you, but the way this thing is framed, it's like it's the United States and Hamas. Well, besides Hamas, there are 13 other Palestinian groups that are
Yes.
involved in this fight. Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Abu Nidal, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. I can't name them all. So it's not just a matter of finding an agreement with Hamas. Number one, number two, Hamas has made it very clear we're not disarming. Okay, maybe Trump and the Israelis want the deal to be we're going to disarm. We're not going to disarm. We're not going to accept this outside commission that's going to come in like like what the United States set up in Iraq back in 2003 with Jerry Bremer at the head of it. And just as a side note, once was friends with Jerry Bremer and knew him, but he stopped communicating with me. So they're not going to accept some Western dominated political government. It's got to be a government of the Palestinians, by the Palestinians, for the Palestinians. Will the Hamas make some concessions, and maybe some of the other groups that don't have the focus on them, move to the front? Perhaps, but the reality is Hamas has gained actually quite a bit of credibility over the course of the last 2 years. Uh, they are at least the ones seen as carrying the majority of the fight to the Israelis. And Israel, despite all their nonsense about, oh, we're the most powerful military in the Middle East. Yeah, they're good at killing women and children. Okay. They're good at slaughtering civilians, but they've been unable to defeat what is essentially an insurgent force that is not heavily armed. They've got light arms in terms of rifles, sidearms, RPGs, some mortars, but they're nowhere anyway equivalent. The issue right now that I just saw before coming on air with you is the discussions about how much of territory is Israel going to give up, withdraw from within Gaza. Netanyahu keeps talking to the Israelis in Hebrew, saying, "No, we're not moving, not one damn inch." But then in English, oh yes, we'll negotiate. You got two different things. He's just counting on the fact that most Americans don't speak Hebrew or understand the nuances. I think Hamas understands the snake that they're dealing with, how just untrustworthy the Zionists are, and so they're not going to just make a deal to make a deal. They're going to make sure that they've got some guarantees.
And you're 100% correct about the 14 organizations. And from what I've heard, Hamas seems to be the least of the problems, because the Palestinian Authority, or Mahmoud Abbas, the whole Beijing declaration, this whole idea, it's dependent upon him, initiating these first steps, and they're not doing anything because they do whatever the U.S. and Israel seemingly want them to do. But Hamas has said, we will not be, we're happy to step away. We're not going to lead Gaza after this all ends. When there's a ceasefire, when there's peace, we're okay with letting others, take the reins. But the idea of disarming them, I mean, that would be pretty much impossible, right?
Yeah.
Unless you had people going in every single tunnel, all these, people don't understand how many tunnels there are and how deep it goes. And it's like multiple cities underground. It'd be impossible.
Well, and in fact, what most folks don't understand, those tunnels would not have been built without the cooperation of some Israelis. Okay. So there were a number of Israelis that made a lot of money off of that. It was a business deal, because the equipment, the material that was used for construction, it came across the border in Egypt, among other places, and there's some. I don't know the specific identity of these people, but I know they exist. That there are There are Israelis who saw this as a great business opportunity and got right in the middle of it. However, they didn't have the knowledge of specifically where the tunnels are, et cetera. Hamas, wisely kept that to itself. But you're correct. This is um, Hamas still holds some cards, and despite the threats from Donald Trump, there's going to be hell to pay. I think they're more than ready to pay whatever the price is.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they've already paid the ultimate price. Most of them. It's very grim, but I think that's just an impossibility at this point. I want to shift gears to the question of Venezuela. I know you've spent time there.
I've been to Caracas and Barquisimeto, and I forget the other location down south.
I think I spoke to you. We were at Valdai before. It was like the first time I was going there, and you were telling me about Caracas and the beauty of it, the mountains surrounding it. And I was like, oh, this sounds very interesting. Well, but nothing can prepare you for when you go there, and it's pretty incredible. Is it possible, though, is the question, for the United States to engage in some sort of a total invasion of the country? Do you think that's a possibility? Or do you think what they're going to try to do is maybe some partial invasions on the outskirts and try to buy off some generals and, take the Syrian approach, I guess?
Well, number one, the U.S. relationship with Venezuela, particularly in terms of the CIA, has, good God, it's been pretty extensive. I back when I was with the Central Intelligence Agency, now, good God, 40 years ago. Though at the time, it's part of what I was doing. I learned that even then, the president of Venezuela was a paid CIA asset. Okay, so we've gone from a period where the CIA basically had control of the country to when Chavez came in and then replaced by Maduro, that the CIA lost control. It is. I'm sure they've been trying to buy off some Venezuelan generals, and no doubt there are a few there that are willing to accept the money. But that ploy so far has not worked. They haven't been able to manufacture the coup. The United States has currently about 4,500 Marines offshore and 3 amphibious ships. If they're stupid enough to try to land in Venezuela and go to Caracas, because you got to go to the seat of power if you're going to control the country, that is an arduous journey up a mountain road.
Yes.
I recall my first time there. You land at the airport, which is out on the coast, and then hop a taxi, and then you're driving up this twisting mountain road. There are ambush position after ambush position. So if the United States tried to put ground forces in and move those ground forces over land to that position, they're going to kill a lot of Venezuelans, but the Venezuelans are going to kill a lot of Marines. So I don't think that's viable. I think what's most likely is, like the United States likes to do, we bomb from above. It's our version of terrorism. We kill civilians, but we don't have to actually do it personally. It's one thing if you're standing in front of somebody and put your hands around their throat and choke them to death, or you stab them, or you shoot them. Then the death's personal. As long as you can drop those bombs from 10,000, 20,000 feet, hey, no big deal. They're not real people. I don't think that will be sufficient to dethrone Maduro. But clearly, what the United States is preparing to do is a war crime at the outset. It's illegal. There's no justification whatsoever. This entire nonsense about, Venezuela's funneling all these drugs into the United States. Well, the first and foremost, the problem's here in the United States with the people who are, obsessed with using those drugs. Number one. But number two, the majority of the drugs are manufactured in places like Colombia, not Venezuela, and Bolivia, and to a lesser extent. And, it's being funneled up through Mexico, and it's coming across the Mexican border, or it's coming into U.S. ports. And yet we're trying to create this lie that Venezuela is the one killing Americans. As I've said on some other shows, I had a 39-year-old nephew. He died in a bathroom that's just 60 feet from to my right here of a fentanyl overdose 2 years ago. So, I don't take this lightly. In a way, it's personal. But what Trump's doing, it's a lie. It's a damnable lie, and it is just, I think we're headed towards that, because yesterday, Trump said, we're done with diplomacy with Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so once again, the United States is the most lawless country in the world in terms of our constant attacks on other countries.
It's pretty incredible also, considering you had Rick Grinnell go down there and meet with Maduro, which diplomatic recognition of the Maduro government at the start of the Trump administration.
Right.
You had Chevron going down there, and they were given permits, and they were, they were getting oil out of the ground. But then this Marco Rubio wins over yet again. The neocons win again.
Yeah.
I guess as a final question, I don't want to keep you too long, but it seems like we're definitely headed down this road now with the lack of the diplomatic cancellation, with the bombing of the boats, fishermen, whatever they are. And do you think that Venezuela, you said that I don't think it's going to be enough to depose Maduro, but do you think that they have the capacity to defend themselves? Because in 2019, when there was the real threats of an invasion back then, Russia was sending just plane after plane after plane. I had a friend there at the time. He said, the whole, the military airport next to the center of the city, it was just all Russian flagged, military cargo jets. Do you think they have the capacity to defend themselves, not from like a land invasion? Obviously, I think they have that. They have the militia, they have the armed forces, they have a brilliant Russian trained security service.
Right.
But from the air.
Right. I understand that they've got some the Chinese equivalent of the S-300 air defense system. I know that both China, Russia, and Iran have had relationships and have provided military support and assistance. And candidly, that may be what's ultimately behind Trump's belligerence and bellicosity. That sort of trying to reinvigorate the Monroe Doctrine to tell these foreigners, stay out of our backyard. But I don't. I guess I believe that Venezuela does have some capability to defend itself. The problem, or it's not a problem, but the reality is this fleet, this naval force that's been all parked off the coast of Venezuela now for almost 2 months. It's costly to keep it there, and so they're either going to have to do. Trump was going to have to do one of two things: either pull the trigger or retreat. Pull them out. I don't see him pulling them out. So I anticipate. I don't know if it's this week or next week, but soon. I think the United States is going to attack it, and we're going to, that's just what the world needs: is one more war, one more place of conflict. If the United States does this, the relationship with particularly South America is going to be probably at the worst level we've ever seen. Already Colombia is on the blacklist because their president, Petro, went to the UN General Assembly and said some unkind things about Donald Trump and his policy. You got President Lula in Brazil that is chafing as well over U.S. interference. The only sort of prostitute in that group is Malay down in Argentina, and he's in trouble now economically, having to get bailed out by the IMF and the World Bank. So, and they're talking about dollarizing the economy. Absolutely, absolutely stupid at a time when the dollar is actually in danger in terms of its dominant role in the world. And you've got in fact, was it just today? India announced, "Hey, we're buying all that Russian oil with the Chinese yuan. We're not using the dollar anymore." So world is changing.
And I saw that Argentina, you saw the messages with Besson, how they sold the soybeans to China after they got the US buyout. You see that story?
No, I didn't see that one. So Argentina sold some soybeans to China as well?
Yeah, and they're undercutting US farmers, and Besson got a text from someone at the Treasury, I think, or no, it was Department of Ag. And he got the text, and journalist, took a screenshot of it at the United Nations, I think it was. And it was this long text explaining, like, I can't believe we just, we're bailing out Argentina, and then they're undercutting our farmers by selling soybeans to China. So, and I was going to ask you one last quick question.
Well, but before you go there, let's talk a little bit quickly about the soybeans. So,
okay.
Was it in February that Donald Trump made that speech? The countries are lining up to kiss my ass over there. Yeah. Well, I understand that Trump went out and had one of his aides go out and buy a big tube of chapstick because he's heading to China because he's got to be kissing some Xi Jinping ass, because what the Chinese did in response to the tariffs of Trump, they said, okay, we're not buying any more of your soybeans. Screw your farmers. We're buying it all from Brazil. And so Trump's going to go over and try to beg them, please buy our soybeans. And I hope the Chinese say, no, we're done buying your agricultural products, stewing your own juices. Plus, Brazil is our partner in BRICS. We're not going to screw them. It just, again, the stupidity of Trump's policies on this are just astounding. Okay, back to your question. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's a story that a lot of people aren't giving any attention to, because the other big aspect, I mean, there's many, but beef also. It's like a ridiculous drop off in beef purchases right now, and Australia is getting all of it. From China. But the last question, I was going to ask you this earlier, but it slipped my thoughts. I couldn't remember what it was.
You're too young to be forgetful. Okay,
that is true.
Get to be my age. It's be my age, and you got an excuse.
Yes, yes. It came back to me. It's okay. Maduro said that they foiled the plot of a false flag bombing attack on the U.S. embassy, which I didn't even know people were in that. But that's apparently where like all the the U.S. Assets hang out. What is that woman's name? Maria Corina Machado. I guess she lives there. And they were going to do some false flag bombing attack. So this is something I always wondered when I was in Caracas. How many CIA people, I don't know what the correct term is, assets, agents, whatever.
Officers, CIA
officers. And, would assets be people who are not official officers?
Correct.
But they're being,
how
many of them do you think are in Caracas?
The size of the CIA station, it always, so the main part was attached to the embassy is called a station. Oftentimes I would anticipate something like the size of Brazil would be, 10 to 15 people. But, you get into places like Armenia, they've got, I wouldn't be surprised if you had a CIA station there of roughly 50 people. So, it varies. The problem is the operating environment. I mean, the Venezuelans understand that they're up against a hostile threat. The fact that the embassy's still open is, I find that remarkable. Maduro would have every reason in the world to break off relations, but he's actually I think he's being pretty smart in handling this, where he's going to make sure that the world sees it's not Venezuela that's the aggressor here, and the actions of Trump, yeah, it's so disturbing. I have I'll call him a friend, but he was saying, this is why I voted for Donald Trump, that he's blowing up these drug boats. And, I want to preserve the relationship, but that's the most goddamn stupid thing I've ever heard anybody say. And this guy is an extremely intelligent individual. Number one, the idea that this is how Venezuela's trafficking drugs to the United States it's a malevolent joke. That's a 1,300-mile journey from the shores of Venezuela in a cigarette boat that has a capability of traveling 250 miles before it needs to be refueled. So essentially, if they're loading drugs onto a cigarette boat to ship them to the United States, they're going to have to refuel 5 times to get us here. And where do you get the fuel? It's not like there's gas stations along the route up. Maybe you can get to Aruba and Curacao and refuel, and then what? So I mean, it's laughable. And then the notion that our intelligence is so good that we know exactly what's on those boats. I had a student recently. I teach. I'm a firearms instructor. I was teaching a range safety officer course, and one of the students had actually just left the Coast Guard. He was in his early 30s, so he's still a young guy. But he was saying, well, he didn't, and he was like classify him as a Trump supporter. But he said, this is insane. We should be if we really believe those boats have drugs on them, stop the boats, seize the drugs, take the people into custody. Now, if they start shooting at you, then we can shoot back. But they haven't fired on the United States. So the United States has established a policy that we can kill whoever the hell we want, when we want, just because we say we believe something bad is happening. It is, we've always done it. We did it in World War II. I mean, one of the hallmarks and distinctive characteristics of the U.S. aspect of that war is we killed, well over 1 million civilians between Germany and Japan with aerial bombardment. The Soviets at the time, to my knowledge, they never engaged in such, missions. It just wasn't in their DNA. Now we're not going to go out and just kill civilians, drop bombs on them. So, that difference in, sort of approach to the morality of killing other human beings still persists. The United States is still, we can kill who we want, when we want, where we want.
Still rings true today. Larry Johnson, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it as always. And everyone be sure to follow Larry on Twitter. I'll